The Baptist minister turned activist Pastor Evan Mawarire recently brought his home country of Zimbabwe to a standstill with #ThisFlag campaign, which mobilized his compatriots who ended up bringing the country to a standstill. Many public servants stayed away from work and demonstrated in the streets, leading to the economic shutdown of the country following failure by the state to pay their salaries. The general discontentment over the current socio-economic realities in the country also influenced this mobilization. This is what Pastor Evan Mawarire said upon his arrival in South Africa.
Fellow Zimbabweans, Evan Mawarire here. Ndinotenda ngiyabonga kakhulu. Thank you so much. I know a lot of people are worried about my safety. Ndinoziva kuti vanhu vakawanda vanga vachitambudzika kuti izvo handina kukuvadza here, ndiri kupi. I am well, ndiri mupenyu, ndakachengetedzeka. I'm well looked after. I want to just encourage you, ndingosimudzira mwoyo yenyu kuti Mwari pane zvavari kutiitira munyika medu. God is doing something amazing in Zimbabwe and you can't get left out. Usasaririre Mwari pavanenge vachigadzira nyika yedu kuti inake. The reason we are raising our voices is because we are trying to build our country. Chikonzero tiri kusimudza manzwi edu ndechekuti izvo tiri kuedza kuvaka nyika yedu, and you have done very well. Panguva ino maZimbabweans vawana inzwi ravo, ndo chombo chatinacho. Our voice is our weapon. Never ever keep quiet, because that is how you build a country. No violence, hapana kurovana, hapana kutukana, no inciting, no insulting, hapana zhoweja. Just using our voice and registering zviri democratic, zviri pamutemo, and that is what's going to help us to go forward. An important thing is unity. Ngatirambe takabatana, and Zimbabweans, you have learned to do that. Ndo chinhu chamagona kuita ichocho munodadisa. You make everyone proud to be Zimbabwean. I'm meeting some citizens where I am right now. I'm in South Africa, and in South Africa, kwanchasangana nema citizens, womashomanane tumapoka netumapoka groups here and there, just to talk about what's going on at home. Kuti tingotaurawo zviri kuitika kumba, timbonzwawo nema ideas. Mwari vakuitirei zvakanaka. May God do well for you. And I will talk to you again in the next few days. Ndineka flu mbichana, I got a bit of a flu. It's cold and I'm tired. I'm sure I'll be fine. I think ndinopora zvangu mazuva anotera. The Bible says this. I love this scripture. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. David says that I will see the Keep praying for Zimbabwe. Pastors, thank you so much for praying. Keep praying for this wonderful country of ours. And I will talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
This past week, Pastor Mawarire was arrested and released on Wednesday evening. He is here in the studio with us to tell us about the experiences in Zimbabwe and the viral campaign, which was not intended to be this influential, which now has mobilized Zimbabweans across the world.
Thank you for having
Pastor
me. Pastor
Mawarire, pleasure to have you with us here in the studio, and we
much.
appreciate that you have made time to talk to us.
Thank you.
Well, it came as a surprise to you, I suppose, this campaign?
It was quite a shock, because it's not something that we had intended to become what it has become today. Not at all. An absolute shock. All I was doing was expressing my personal discontent at the situation in Zimbabwe and how it was affecting my family. And a lot of people identified with that, unbeknown to me. So that went viral, and before we knew it, we had a campaign that was now challenging government on the state of our nation as ordinary citizens.
How did you put it together originally?
Well, originally, the way we put it together is that from that first video that was lamenting the fact that this flag, the promise that this flag holds, had been broken, when so many people responded to it, I then said, to show your patriotism, I know that many of us for years have shrunk back from almost loving our country. Take a selfie of yourself with your flag. So that's how that grew. That went completely viral.
And people were taking their own selfies all over the place.
All over the world.
Yeah.
And posting it on social media.
Yeah.
So that again grew. So I've always answered people when they say, so what was your strategy when you began? We didn't have a strategy.
Yes.
We just built upon every single day when we saw the response of people.
Yes.
After that, I then said, I'm going to ask you to now physically carry your flags. So now this was an attempt to move the campaign from off social media,
Yes,
online.
into the real world.
Into the real world.
Yeah.
I said, for 25 days, from the 1st of May to the 25th of May, find a Zimbabwe flag, carry it with you wherever you go. Just go to work and carry it with you wherever you go. As a sign of saying to our government, is enough. Can we stop the suffering of our countrymen?
Yes.
So again, people responded to that. And for 25 days, I would record a video every day encouraging Zimbabweans why we were protesting.
Yes.
And more importantly, encouraging them to be bold, to break the fear.
Yes.
Because this is what has held us back so many years from not speaking out, particularly as a collective, and doing it openly.
But
So-
and surely I can imagine, I mean, carrying a flag cannot be seen as an offense of any nature, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And did the authorities react in any way when they started seeing then Zimbabwean nationals go to work, go through their daily activities carrying the flag?
Oh, yes, they did. In fact, one incident is that the flag, two members of parliament from one of the opposition parties actually wore their flags into parliament and actually caused, a bit of a standstill in parliament because the Speaker of the House asked them to take off their flags. And they argued that, wait a minute, this is the national flag. And besides, there are members in here that also have the little badges, on their jackets. And how different is that? Eventually, they had to leave. But the response from government ministers for us was a bit shocking because they would mock us on social media. And for them, it was, they were trying to say that it's only a social media campaign and it's going nowhere. And of course, here we are, today. And again, I think it is what continues to galvanize us as citizens when we see the fact that our government doesn't seem to take us seriously when we speak out.
Let me ask you this, Pastor Mawarire. I mean, what is life like for an ordinary Zimbabwean to lead you to take up your flag, take to social media and vent your unhappiness, but still become patriotic around your flag and your nationality?
Everyday life for a Zimbabwean is so tough to the point that you literally have got to plan your day as you go along. A regular Zimbabwean starts off his day by thinking, where am I going to get my cash from? In other words, I've got money in the bank, but I can't get it out. So I must spend 3, 4, 5, 6 hours waiting to access maybe $50 a day. And I'm trying to pay bills that are in excess of $600, $700, $800, within the month.
So you can only have access to a certain amount, in other words.
Exactly. Yeah. And the madness of it is that it is my money.
Yes.
And this is what is maddening us as Zimbabweans, to say, our way of life is being disrupted so much to the point that we can't send our children to school. We can't live the lives that we want to live, okay? But it gets worse because now you have people that are voiceless or people that are orphans or that are widows. They have nothing, completely nothing. Tim, we have a situation in Zimbabwe. Someone was asking me, they say, well, when you go in Harare, things look normal. So what do you mean people are struggling? And I said, it's when the night falls, when darkness falls and people go back home and they take off their masks, that the real Zimbabweans come out, the ones who are having marital problems because of economic challenges. The Zimbabweans that have to sleep on the street, not because they don't have a home, but because at the market, the old lady couldn't sell enough to make 50 cents to go home and come back. So she sleeps on the street with her wares and her little grandchild. This is the real story of Zimbabweans and what's taking place in Zimbabwe
now
right now.
Now the public servants have not been paid or were not paid on time, right? And it looks like there are cash problems and it will be continuing for some time. So what do Zimbabweans across the board want to see happen then? I mean, beyond carrying their flag, something has got to happen.
Absolutely. Zimbabweans are calling on their government to be a government that cares. I think this is one of the biggest cries that we have. Do you care about us? Because it looks like when you implement certain policies, you look like you don't care. For example, the government implemented a policy just recently where they banned the importation of basic commodities by traders. Now, you promised us 2.2 million jobs that you have not delivered. People go and create their own jobs to import basic commodities. And by the way, we are not producing a huge percentage of these basic...
generally would be consumer products,
Exactly.
For that matter, I noticed. Yeah.
So now you come and you ban and you say you need a license, and your explanation is that you're protecting the local industry, which doesn't exist. We have had no jobs, we have had no investment. But now you don't seem like you care. You are being hostile towards me, who is trying to survive in a hard country where you have failed to provide for me. And so I think what Zimbabweans want is their government to show that they care. Deal with corruption, particularly with government ministers. You know who they are, we know who they are. if as Zimbabweans we see that you are dealing with them decisively and the way that it should be done, then we know you have our interests at
But
heart.
now, you are not a political activist in the true sense of the word, right? You are just an ordinary priest going about his life.
Yes, sir.
And expressing his unhappiness about state of affairs, and then decided that you should carry the flag as a form of expressing that. Now, it's big mobilization around this. People now look at Evan Mawarire and say, where to next? What do you think is going to happen or should happen to take the whole mobilization campaign forward?
I think the exciting thing that has already happened, and we have bagged this success as citizens, is that we have now begun to mobilize each other to scale the wall of fear, to get up and to speak truth to power. There's a generation, Tim, in Zimbabwe that is no longer afraid. And I say this with as much boldness as I would in Zimbabwe. This generation of young people has stood and they've said, we have been waiting for a chance to build our nation and we haven't yet gotten that chance. So what this flag is doing is beginning to prepare a mass of people, both old and young, to get ready to now bring out the Zimbabwe that they have always hidden in their hearts, join that together and see that become a reality. And we are looking particularly towards the coming elections in 2018, because this is the chance we have in terms of making a change when it comes to the Constitution, constitutionally making a change. How can we do that? So we're now beginning to mobilize young people that have never voted before and people that had stopped voting to say we have a chance to galvanize ourselves around a common vision. And I think by the time the elections come, we will have discovered what that common vision is, and we will rally around that without a doubt.
You were arrested this past week and released on Wednesday evening. Are you not concerned, scared, worried that you might be arrested again when you go back to Zimbabwe?
I'm a Zimbabwean. And getting involved in politics is something that strikes fear in the hearts of Zimbabweans that are not politicians. And so that fear is there. But I must face that fear, Tim, because I don't have any other place I call home on this planet except Zimbabwe. How can I be afraid to be at home?
Are Zimbabweans supporting you?
Zimbabweans are not only supporting me, but Zimbabweans are supporting Zimbabwe. And I think this is the exciting story about the narrative about what's happening in Zimbabwe, is that Zimbabweans are rallying around their nation. They are now beginning to protect democracy. They are protecting the rights that are enshrined in our constitution.
Now, the reaction from South Africa, the initial one, was that this whole campaign was part of a third force that wanted regime change in Zimbabwe. You heard about that. And
Yes.
what do you think about those comments?
First and foremost, it's a shame. It's a crying shame that our leaders in Africa think that Africans cannot think for themselves and need to be motivated by a Western power to cry out. I don't need anyone to tell me that I'm hungry. I don't need anyone to tell me that I can't send my kids to school. It's a reality I live with every day, but more importantly, it shows the distance between our politicians and the people that they call their constituents. They don't know our reality. For them, it's fake. For them, it's something that we make up. And they expect us to make a plan like we have always done. And they need to come back to that first love that they had when we all went to the bush to fight for the liberation of our countries.
This came from South Africa, the ANC in South Africa. How did you feel when the statement came from the governing party here?
It is a betrayal of everything that we call Ubuntu. It's a betrayal of everything that we call African. The fact that we cannot look each other in the eye. My expectation is that the seniors of our region can sit down and look each other in the eye and say, you are mistreating your children. Would you look after them? We hear the cries of your children from next door. Is everything okay in your house? And if those senior brothers cannot do that for us, then as citizens and as children, we start to believe that we are on our own in this struggle. And therefore, we start to find ways to lead ourselves if they won't do it.
Pastor Evan Mawarire, everything of the best to you and fellow Zimbabweans. And we hope that in due time, your wishes and desires will be delivered upon.
Thank you so much for having me, Tim. God bless you.
Much appreciated. Well, that's the situation in Zimbabwe. And this is the ordinary man, priest, who just took to social media to express his unhappiness about state of affairs. And that video posting went viral and became a big mass mobilization tool And now Zimbabweans are rising up and saying, enough is enough. Let's hear your views. If you are Zimbabwean, South African, what do you think of this mass mobilization that's emerging in Zimbabwe? Write to us tonight with Tim Modise at gmail.com or go to Twitter and let's hear your views there. And our handle is at Tim Modise.